Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. I hope you're all happy and healthy, doing the things you love. This is your second video of the day. If you enjoy this sort of shorter, more compact format content, or content format even, then smash the like button, smash the subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell and drop some comments. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. Really do appreciate all of the support the channel is getting from you guys. It's jumping up every day. And really just wanted to say thank you, because without you guys, it couldn't be possible. So, yeah, just want to let you know it's all very much appreciated. Right, we've got a couple of stories for you that I wanted to get out to you yesterday. One of them is a scout report on the highly rated Genoa defender Antonee de Winter, who is being highly touted as being the likely replacement that Tottenham Hotspur are going to go after in a world where Christian Romero does, in fact, leave and pack his bags on his way to Spain, to La Liga, to one of either Atletico Madrid or Real Madrid. It's first and foremost, it's important to remember that Atletico Madrid have been, for the most part, the only team that have really been expressing a long-term interest in Christian Romero. Of course, he wanted, or he's suggesting that he wanted to leave when he took that interview at our own training ground, which kind of rubbed me up the wrong way. A couple of little digs from Romero, inferred and thinly veiled digs, at least, via his social team over the last couple of months. And, you know, it's kind of, I think, ruffled a few feathers. He's clearly trying to engineer a move, in my opinion. He has said, or at least it's been reported, that he is happy to stay at Tottenham if that's what ends up materializing. But at the same time, I think he would prefer to go to sunnier climes. I think he also mentioned that it's difficult for his family here because it rains all the time. First world problems. Let me start, though, before we get into that one, guys, before we get into Antonee de Winter, I want to tell you a story about Antonee Robinson, the Fulham left-back, an absolute rat-a-tat-tat left-back. I've wanted him, loved him for so long. I think he's so very much responsible for Fulham's ability to play down the width. They're so extraordinarily capable down the width. They're terrorizing defenders week in, week out last season, the season before, and him on the left and Kenny Tete on the right are in no small part responsible for that. Their ability to overlap is insane. But let's start with the story with Antonee Robinson coming to Tottenham, and we can talk about that, and then we're going to move into Antonee de Winter shortly. So the story here is just from Spurs Web. It's from our friend Barad Tiramalai again, who is obviously the most frequent poster of content. He posts more content than I do. Tottenham Hotspur have just learned that they would have to break the bank to land Antonee Robinson, with Fulham having no intention of letting the left-back leave on the cheap. Udogie is now the only recognised left-back in Tottenham's squad after Serge Reguilon was released by the club. While Spurs have taken the option to extend Ben Davies' contract by 1 year, the Welshman has featured primarily as a centre-back for club and country over the last few years. That perhaps explains why it emerged earlier this week that Tottenham have expressed an interest in signing Antonee Robinson. The asking price for the 27-year-old has come from Paul O'Keefe, who said the Cottagers are aware of Spurs' admiration. A new report from Give Me Sport has now claimed that Robinson has attracted interest from several top clubs in Europe. It is asserted that Tottenham Hotspur are the latest club to explore a move for the USA international. As a result, the West London side have slapped the £45 million price tag on the defender, which they hope will fend off Spurs and other interested clubs. Marco Silva's men believe that the price is a fair one, considering the fee that the likes of Rain Aït-Nouri and Milos Kerkez have gone for this summer. Now, look, here's the story right here. So here's the kind of the nuts and bolts of this one for me. It's that, yes, Ryan Aït-Nouri, probably a better, more rounded, I think a year or two more on his side in terms of favourable age, has certainly set a precedent for the left-back market. Milos Kerkez obviously is a different beast altogether, but going to Liverpool, he's going to obviously force and push for that move. Not so sure necessarily there's as much desire to pay £45 million for a player that's going to be a rotational figure at Tottenham. But for what it's worth, Antonee Robinson is sensational. I don't think he's worth £45 million. If that's the price, I think it's one that you avoid because we have more pressing needs. There is, of course, also the argument that Kyle Walker-Peters makes a lot more sense because he's club trained, and that Tottenham only currently have one club-trained player under the homegrown rule for UEFA purposes, and that the absence of getting those other three spots filled essentially means that when it comes to the Champions League squad, any given match day, Tottenham will only be able to field 21 players in their match day squad rather than the maximum of 25. What I would say, or 24, what I would say is that I'm not sure it's necessarily just as big of a problem only being able to field 21 players, unless you have a massive injury crisis. Some of these players that are sitting to that club-trained, homegrown kind of rotation rule, they're not going to participate anyway. Unless you have a major injury crisis, then it's only really going to come into play if you are looking at getting players that you otherwise wouldn't be looking to reacquire, like a Kyle Walker-Peters, like a Dennis Sirkin, like any number of other players that have come through the ranks. And bearing in mind that Tottenham's participation in Europe for next season is probably fragile, given the amount of teams that are improving, given the fact that we finished so poorly last year, and we're not going to have the benefit of being able to participate in Europe through a backdoor in all likelihood, because we're not going to win the Champions League next season unless an absolute miracle occurs. So do you really want to tie yourself down to a player for 3-4 years, even if they're relatively affordable, even if they're not that particularly oppressive on the wage structure? Do you really want to tie yourself to a player that you wouldn't otherwise be looking at just to fill one particular squad spot that, as I say, is only going to become relevant anyway in a world where you have an injury crisis? Are you really going to feel that comfortable seeing Kyle Walker-Peters up against the likes of Bayern Munich, up against the likes of, you know, Manchester City, Real Madrid, whatever? I don't think he's that great of a player. I don't like the fact that, personally, it's not a big deal. Some would call it loyalty, but I personally don't think it's a massive sign of intent of someone's career that if he went down with the ship twice with Southampton, you know, I think he should have maybe forced to move the year before last when he went down, just like other players did, like Lavia, for example. So for me, I just think that it's not as big of a deal to need to fill that hole as people make out. It's also, given the predicament of where Tottenham's European status will lie for the following years to come, I don't necessarily think it's that big of a deal. And of course, there are other homegrown club-trained players that you might be able to pivot your attention to that can offer far more value, that we've heard about and spoken about many times on this channel, that is more likely to be achievable next January 2027, which would be Harry Kane. I know people are saying, let's move on from him. But if he is more affordable at a far reduced price, someone of his caliber, someone of his stature, if he does achieve what he wants to achieve and he does want to have one last swan song at Tottenham towards the tail end of his career, he's a player that doesn't rely on his pace anyway, like a Teddy Sheringham type. You can keep going a little bit longer in your career if you're not someone that is going to be a victim of the kind of just the fact that Father Time waits for no man. And so that option probably will present itself if we qualify for Europe next season via the league in and of itself, or via a domestic cup win. But I don't particularly think it's a massive deal. So Antonee Robinson, for me, at the right price point, is so much more of an entertaining idea that I would really love to see. I just want to spend a little bit of time taking a quick gander at Antonee Robinson's stats. I'm sure I don't need to go through this with you because you'll all be familiar with how amazing he is, right? But as a 27-year-old left back for Fulham, compared to all other left backs, all other fullbacks in the top 5 leagues around Europe, for a Fulham team that traditionally have somewhat struggled in terms of the sort of relative league performance over the last few years that he's been a part of it, his numbers are consistently sensational for a player that likes to get on the outside and do a lot of the creative work for a team that I think will emulate and represent a lot of how we will go in a world where you have inside forwards under a Thomas Frank system, either in a back 5 or in a traditional 4-2-3-1 model, for example, where you have more narrower inside forwards. In terms of assists, he's in the 97th percentile. Goals and assists, 86th percentile. Progressive carries with the ball, 3.5 times a game. He's carrying that ball forward as a fullback, 91st percentile. Relative to all other fullbacks in the top 5 leagues, really impressive stuff for a Fulham left back. Progressive passes received, 7.8 per game. So what does that mean? He gets forward, he overlaps, and then people are looking for him all the time. And that is, as I say, it absolutely stands to reason why he is so pivotal in Fulham's creative outputs. Let's look at his passing situation. Not an issue here at all. Green bars galore. As I said already, his assist is out of this world. Passes into the penalty area 1.6 times a game. He's a creative threat. In a team that needs creativity from their width, from overlapping fullbacks, makes a lot of sense to think about this guy in more than just a price tag and in more than just a rotation. I actually think he can offer something different to Destiny Udogie. And I think that even with Destiny Udogie's potential injury issues, at the right price point, it makes a lot of sense. Crosses into the penalty area. He's handy with his crosses as well. 90th percentile. If we shoot forward to his defensive work, now this is the beautiful thing about him. He's such a balanced fullback, guys. He's so unbelievable. He can get forward. He can get forward, do everything that you need him to do in that model of football that we're probably going to be emulating. But in terms of his defensive work, he gets back. People have been saying for a long time to me, Sean, I think he's got a problem with his heart. I think he would fail a medical. Well, if he does, and I don't know, I'm not a doctor and I've never seen anything to validate that. But if that's true, then he is superhuman in terms of his ability to incorporate that into his effort, because he gets back in a Fulham system that, more than half of the times that they're playing football are going to be on the back end of an over dominance in possession in territory from stronger teams in the Premier League. Look at his defensive work. 88th percentile for tackles. Tackles won, 85th percentile. Tackles in the defensive third, 89th. And in the midfield third too. So if you play with a higher line, he's not uncomfortable or out of his depth in that middle third defensive pocket. Dribblers tackled, 70th percentile. Dribblers challenged, 87th. Interceptions, not only 3% of fullbacks are higher in that particular department. Massively important for things like transitions. If you get transitioned on, which is something that's going to happen with Tottenham, if you are a team that sort of flows forward, and we're trying to get, as Thomas Frank alluded to, that we're going to be trying to sort of sit on the shoulders of what Ange Postecoglou created. We're going to move forward in the same sort of vein with attractive attacking football where possible. Then when you get transitioned on, which is the risk and the jeopardy of doing that sort of high intensity, high octane football, you need fullbacks that know how to position themselves and know how to snuff out a pass. And interceptions, clearances, those sorts of things are the way that you judge that statistically. Obviously, you need to incorporate your eye test, but 97th percentile for tackles and interceptions, 95th percentile, clearances, 90th percentile. In possession, the guy is a heavy baller, right? He doesn't shy away. He's incorporated all the time. 71 touches per game. Pedro Porro probably has more at Tottenham, but I don't think Destiny Udogie had anything like that amount on average. I'll check if I did. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong about that. But that's a hell of a lot of activity on the ball. And like I say, he's part of the forward move and he's part of the back. Balance and creativity with defensive solidarity is everything that you should be looking for a Thomas Frank model of fullback football. And I absolutely think this guy would be a dream. Carries, 76th percentile, 38 carries per game. Carrying distance, 209 yards a game. Progressive carrying, 120. All of these in the top 10 to 15 percentile. There's nothing to dislike about this guy. And by the way, he wins 66% of all of the aerial duels that he gets involved in, which is in the 96th percentile. We struggle sometimes back post bulldozers, right? From corner kicks and things. Emerson Royale, say what you want about Emerson Royale in terms of his overall game. He never let us down as a back post merchant on the right back spot. We've never really had too much of that supremacy from a left back. And in Antonee Robinson, we absolutely have it. So in terms of the stats, guys, yeah, look, and just to be fair and completely transparent, in terms of his output, it's not up there relative to others in terms of his goals and shooting, but that's not necessarily what you're looking for, right? We have enough in that, or you'd hope we would have enough by the start of the season in terms of putting together a squad that can compete. For me, this guy, I would absolutely be over the moon if Tottenham can sign him. Unfortunately, £45 million is a little bit too steep for me. If you could go back to the negotiating table for a 27-year-old, again, Daniel Levy not liking to buy 27, 28-year-olds anymore, but if you could get that price point to like 28, 30, maybe 32, and going up to say 35, depending on certain performances, I think it's a really, really smart option. Then Jed Spence can focus on being the right back that he wants to be and that we know he can be. You've got Pedro Porro that he can compete with. And actually, for what it's worth, in a Thomas Frank system, you could make the argument that when Destiny Udogie is playing, that's far more attackingly minded, you could have Jed Spence on the other side. And when Pedro Porro is playing, you can have Antonee Robinson on the other side for that balance, that yin and that yang. You need to have one of them that's more defensively minded and one of them that gets forward. Either way, it gives you incredible options. I'm not terrified or scared of whichever two of those four are playing in any particular system, whether it's fullbacks or wingbacks. And I really don't think it's a bad shout here. 45 million is just too much for a person that's not going to come in and start every game. And also, I don't necessarily think it's a fair comparison to compare him to Kirkes and to Ray and Aït-Nouri. But for what it's worth, I don't think there's that much difference between Ray and Aït-Nouri and Antonee Robinson. I think both of them are top draw, were massively underrated by fans generally. Manchester City have got a bargain there. I don't think that necessarily Tottenham are going to pay 45, but if there's truth to the story, then I'm all aboard it. I just think that you have to haggle hard on this one. And I don't think we have necessarily a bad relationship with Fulham. I don't think Fulham will see us as a rival. I hope not. I hope there wouldn't be a Tottenham tax on this. But if you're going to give me the option right now of Kyle Walker-Peters because we need a club-trained homegrown, if that's the general valuation, whilst I have said before, and in all honesty, I have said to you guys, I don't mind if the club have to do these certain things, if they have to go conditionally around certain profiles or certain, like merits of players because of holes in our squad in certain departments. I don't mind if we do that. And if we are going to do that, we have to do it in an area where we already have general and relative strength in depth. So I don't mind if we go for a Kyle Walker-Peters. But for me, if you're going to give me the choice of the two at the right price point, I think there's a hell of a lot of merit in going after an Antonee Robinson. He's not old. He's got loads of time on his side. And by the way, if Daniel Levy is looking for investment, and if there is an investment that's coming from the West Coast, we've spoken before about the likes of Johnny Cardozo and Jonathan David coming to Tottenham because there's that kind of North American vibe as you're approaching the World Cup year, etc. Yada, yada, yada. If the NFL thing is going to be a part of any future investment, all of those things that have been in the zeitgeist, Daniel Levy it would be smart and behoove him to get someone that's part of the American system. I did also mention that we could have got Malik Tillman for the same purposes. He obviously has gone in other directions. So all of the three alternatives in that regard have ended up not coming to Tottenham. I don't think it would be a problem to go and get someone for a shirt sale possibility, accessing a new kind of fan base, where there's a lot of money to be earned, where Antonee Robinson might pay for himself in some regard in that department. It'd be a very interesting transfer. I'd love to see it. And like I say, it's all depending on the price point and all depending on whether Tottenham are absolutely firm on replacing and getting that club-trained homegrown quota up. I'm just not sure that it's as big of a deal as people are making it out, because absent some injury crisis, we're not going to need to be playing Kyle Walker-Peters anyway. I don't rate the player. And in the future, if we re-qualify for Europe, which isn't a guarantee next season by any stretch of the imagination, or the season after, by any stretch of the imagination, then in January 2027, there might be a different, more viable, more valuable, and certainly something that I think a lot of Tottenham fans, you might roll your eyes and say it's never going to happen, but in a world where it could, I think most people would prefer to see Harry Kane come back in and figure out and fix up that club homegrown quota for the 27-28 season than seeing Kyle Walker-Peters being signed on a 4-year deal just because he happened to come through the club. Let me know your thoughts, guys. I was going to do the Coney de Winter story, but because I've been going for 17 minutes, I do waffle, don't I? I will be bringing this out on another video coming shortly. Like, subscribe, and comment. And if you enjoy these things on audio format, guys, you can check them out. Spotify, Apple Pods, all that stuff, links in the description. Like, subscribe, and comment. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.